Welcome to Just Break Up, the podcast about love, heartbreak, and all the relationship advice you don't want to hear. My name is Sierra DeMulder.
And I'm Sam Blackwell, and today we're going to answer a letter from somebody who is wondering if she should reach out to her ex. But before we begin, we just want to give you our Surgeon General's warning, which is that Sierra and I are not licensed mental health practitioners.
Correct. We are not trained in any of this. We are not professionals, so please take our advice as you see fit. We're only here to offer our humble musings, so hopefully shed some understanding and maybe some laughs about the incredibly rewarding but mostly confusing experience that is love.
All right, everyone. Our letter today comes from Stuck in Second Gear, whose pronouns are she, her, who is writing from The Void. My now ex, he, him, and I, she, her, broke up at the beginning of this year after almost 4 years together. Our first 3 years felt, at the time, blissful. He made me feel safe and understood, while I made him feel accepted and prioritized. We knew since the beginning that I had an avoidant attachment style, and he a more anxious one. Despite that, we worked hard to be secure for one another. About 3 years in, we moved in together and regularly discussed our future, marriage, kids, but things also started to unravel. Work was busier than ever for the both of us, and I started to take the relationship for granted. He asked for more time and attention from me, but I put it off because I was encountering an overwhelming amount of pressure at work. We also started fighting a lot. It was during these arguments that our unhealthy conflict styles reared their ugly heads. I would get angry and critical, and he would get defensive and show contempt. At my lowest point, I threatened our relationship and stonewalled him, which I've since come to recognize as toxic behavior. Just before the holidays, we decided to spend a few weeks apart to really think about what we wanted. When we came back together, he shared that he didn't want to move forward. At that moment, I was totally shocked. It felt like my whole world had unraveled without my noticing, and clarity set in immediately. Why didn't I listen harder and respond to his needs? Why couldn't I control my emotions and speak more kindly during conflict? These were all things that he had asked of me, and it took his walking away to make me snap to attention. In our final conversation, I was honest and said I still wanted to try, that I knew I had more to give. But he was resolute. He said that he had waited long enough to put himself first, and he didn't trust me anymore to respond to his needs. It's been almost 8 months now, and I'm not sure where I am. Most days, I'm fully accepting of what happened and wish only happiness for the both of us. Other days, I can't help but wonder if we've grown enough to come back together. When he ended things, we agreed to go no contact for at least 6 months, and minus a few cordial exchanges early on around logistics, we've stuck to it. In the meantime, I've spent this time working on myself, going to therapy every week, revisiting my relationship with work, and practicing controlling my emotions. I've not jumped back into dating seriously, in part because I feel it would signal a permanent closing of the door. Said differently, I know I'm changing for my own sake, but if I'm being honest, part of me is motivated by changing for my ex. Despite all of this, I feel I can't reach out to him, in part because I'm so afraid of being rejected again. In part because I believe that if he wanted to try again, he would have reached out to me, since he was the dumper. In part because I feel I don't deserve to ask him for another chance after I had hurt him so deeply and ignored his needs. I guess my questions are this. Do I reach back out to him? Is it acceptable to ask for another chance when I had displayed such toxic behavior? Am I better off taking these learnings and applying them for my next relationship instead of disrupting what I imagine is his much happier life without me? I need to hear some hard truths because I have a lot of love for this person, and part of me feels if I really care about him, I should respect his decision, put him first, and leave him alone. The other part, the selfish part, wants to restart and try again. S&S, what do I do?
That is so tricky. All right, my darling, thank you so much for writing, for trusting us with the delicacies of this letter, and listening. Thanks for listening. I just want to say that you've had a really big year. You've had a really hard year of growth and hard conversations, and maybe looking at yourself and your actions and the past with clarity and the sort of uncomfortable truth that comes with being honest with yourself about your behavior. So out the gate, I just want to say I'm proud of you. And it's been a really long year. And I hope that you're feeling proud of yourself. To the question of whether or not you should reach out to your ex, obviously, Sam and I historically have had different feelings about this. Y'all know I'm married to my ex, so I obviously have some conflicting feelings about it. But today we wanted to talk a little bit about that, a little bit about the question that you're actually asking, but mostly about how we can put our own growth in perspective of other people, and how a lot of motivations aren't really as, there's no like pure motivations or simply altruistic healing periods, and how we can move forward through that healing while forgiving ourselves for what we didn't know when we didn't know it. But first, we're going to take a very, very quick break.
All right, everyone, welcome back. Stuck in second gear. Just want to sort of affirm everything that Sierra said about how challenging this is, and how sorry we are for this breakup, and that you're still carrying the hurt of this breakup. And I think one of the things that I appreciate about your letter is the amount of self-awareness that you have around your own behavior in this, right? Sort of being able to look back at the relationship and hold the idea that there were two people in it that were that sort of reached an impasse of incompatibility, and that like your own behavior that came out of that was really not great, right? And that you regret it, and that you recognize that it was not good behavior and that it was harmful. And I think, doing that level of self-awareness comes with a lot of feelings that can come up around it, right? Like the acceptance of the fact that we are imperfect, that we can cause harm, that we can do things that are outside of our values, can bring up a lot of feelings of regret or shame or anxiety or all of these different things. And I appreciate that you're sort of willing to sit in the pain of those feelings rather than sort of put your head in the sand and say like, oh, we fell apart because, he was perfect and I was terrible. Or we fell apart because he was a dick to me and broke up with me for no reason, right? Like you're sort of looking at this in a way that I think is really trying to hold the humanity of both you and your ex. And I think that that's really wonderful. And I appreciate that about you.
Yeah, definitely. I know it's really difficult, but you can forgive yourself for all of that behavior, because forgiveness can go hand in hand with growth. Compassion can go hand in hand with personal accountability. And I said it in the intro, but it's just true. You didn't know how to be better, and now you do. And you can't ask yourself to be a different person retroactively. It can only happen moving forward. And, a lot of the stuff you said is I recognize in my own behavior, particularly oddly, taking the relationship for granted. I just wanted to say that like, that is so often a byproduct of a really stressful life. And is it the most graceful, compassionate thing that we, that we could do? No. Does it hurt people? Yes. But sometimes it just happens. So you can forgive yourself for all of this, because forgiveness doesn't mean that all was okay. Forgiveness means, wow, this brought out a lot in me. And now I know this is the formula that equals me not being a great partner, me not being a person I'm super proud of. And these are the steps. These are the hurdles. These are the parameters. These are the things that I need to not be like that anymore, And
I think that feeling that you have of like, most days I feel accepting of what's happened. I wish us both well. I hold us both in my heart. And then some days I'm like, what if, could we, right? I think that that's really normal, right? To feel that way about a relationship. And there are relationships in my life that are years and years over where those feelings of like, oh, what if, still come up, right? I think that as people who are capable of both being really present and in the moment, and also remembering things and imagining things, right? I think that that's part of what makes us human. And some of that stuff can be hard for us to hold. But I think it's important to recognize the fact that, like, just because you have these moments of feeling like, what if, or we could have, or any of those things, doesn't mean that you're somehow like not progressing in your healing, right? Or that you're somehow like too hung up on this person, or not ready to start dating or making a decision about what you want to do moving forward, because healing is not linear. And that also sort of speaks to this idea that, like, the motivations for our healing are also not like pure or perfect. And this fear that you have, or not necessarily this fear, but you sort of named this idea of like, I think that I'm doing this healing for myself, but also like it might be a little bit because I want him to see it, or I'm imagining getting back with him. And, you know, Sarah and I have talked on this podcast of the idea of like the important motivation for healing coming from a feeling of loving ourselves, right? This idea of like, I want to grow and heal and learn new things because I deserve it, and I want to care for myself and tend to myself. But obviously that's not the
realistic.
Like, it's not like some sort of, yeah, like, absolutely. It's not like this purity test that we're asking you all to do, or that we're even asking ourselves to do. Like, to a certain extent, like, yeah, I'm really glad that much of your motivation is coming from your own sort of wanting to get better or to see yourself differently. Am I alarmed or concerned that it also is a little bit about your ex? Like, no, absolutely not. Yeah. Because the motivation doesn't have to be pure for the work to go well, you know?
Well, and we've talked in the past about like the difference between guilt and shame. And, you know, shame is like, I'm a bad person. And guilt is like, I feel bad because I acted poorly or whatever. And it sounds like you're appropriately being motivated by some guilt, right?
Yes, absolutely. And guilt is a powerful motivator, right? And
shame is not.
Shame is not. Shame causes us to go just like
feel really bad about our dog's teeth.
Implode. Absolutely. Whereas guilt can offer us an opportunity to do things differently, to recognize the harm that we've caused, to, you know, try and make amends with people. Like, all of that can be really helpful in a lot of ways. So, and if you're interested in more about that, read Brene Brown, because she has many books that more clearly articulate the difference between all of those different things.
Yeah.
Should we get into whether or not she should reach out to this ex? Should we answer the core question and not just like muse about her ideas of what she's going through?
I do want to say I really love Sam's sentiment that like there is no pure. We often like to think about things in hierarchies because we love to feel like we have a sense of place, you know, in things. And not only do we put like hierarchies on things, we like to think that there is like a right and wrong way to do things, or that like we're somehow less altruistic or pure or, I don't know, good if we are motivated externally versus internally or whatnot. Sure. And it's just an impossible standard to set ourselves. So thank you for making that point. I think I'm going to like think about that for a long time.
For sure. Like, some of the reasons why I had to like do my own healing journey is because I was like tired of like being crabby with everyone all the time. You know what I mean? Like, I was like,
You're
I'm
like,
not behaving.
I guess I'll heal for other people.
Yeah, absolutely. I was like, I'm hurting people's feelings because I haven't like dealt with my own shit. So I guess I'll figure that out. Right. Like, or like part of it is also like, I need to not sound like an idiot on this podcast. So like, let me do some like good therapy work as well. Right. And like the benefits of that have been healing for sure. But like the motivations for it weren't like, oh, I'm going to get in touch with myself. Right. Yeah. Like, I'm going to get in my body and be in the present all the time. Like, for sure that was part of it. I also wanted that, but like there were other factors that have like that have and are continuing to help me like commit to the perpetual forever work of healing that we're all trying to do.
And honestly, this for me connects to whether or not she should reach out to her ex, because part of me, I think the reason why I'm such a sucker for stories like this, other than my own personal, I'm a sucker. Other than my own personal history, is that I have a deep desire for everyone's best selves to be known. Like I read this letter and I want her to rest in the absolute comfort that is people knowing the work that she's put into herself and the growth. And I think I just have that deep desire for my best to be known, which is an anxious desire. Let's be real.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Which is a people-pleasing, controlling desire for sure. But there's something genuine there. There's something genuine there that these people were together for a long time. They knew each other intimately. I'm sure they supported each other through some fucking hard shit like we always do. And so there's an intimacy and a deep genuineness to wanting her to be able to be known more fully by this important person in her life. And also, I continually struggle with that external internal motivation, and I want to be able to move through the world knowing that I am lovable and valuable and growing and deserving of love without anyone telling me that. And to be honest, y'all, I'm not right now in this moment. It's very hard for me to fill up my own cup. And I want that for our listeners just as much as I want them to be known as their best selves. And one of those wishes is more realistic than the other. Do you know what I mean? Like we are never going to be fully known ever, even by the people who know us the most intimately. My wife does not fully know me. She can't. She can't be in my brain 24/7. She can't hear my innermost thoughts.
For sure.
And I'll always have to explain myself to her. You know what I mean? Like when we have conflicts, we'll always have to communicate. So I don't know, man. Upon reading this letter, I feel like you are in a really good place. And I often, when I fantasize about y'all reaching out to your exes, I imagine that contact as one being done in peace, from a place of peace, where you say, I don't need you to do anything with this information. I don't need you to respond. I don't need anything from you. I just wanted to let you know, or I wanted you to know me. I hope you have a great life. Like, see you never. Like, that's where I imagine these letters coming from, is this place of peace that if they never respond to you, because they will probably never respond to you, or it will be more rejection, which is okay. Guess what? Rejection is a part of life. But like, I don't know. That's where I get like a little torn, is that. And so my opinion is actually, surprisingly, don't reach out.
What?
I know. Or
I'm shocked.
Don't reach out, period. And if you do reach out, maybe wait until you feel like you're at a little bit more of a place of peace. You've done so much work. You're doing really good. And maybe we don't want to alter that trajectory with a potential like road bump sort of thing.
The way that I would think about this situation, and obviously like Sierra and I are different people in different bodies with like different
marriages.
Different marriages, different experiences of our exes and like all of that good stuff. Part of me would want to approach my own sense of healing by being of service to this person by not reaching out to them. Yeah. Right? And I know that sounds like really contradictory, and like had a conversation with a friend about this recently with another person in our life who has some narratives about the two of us that are not true, right? But that are like sort of helping them figure out what happened to them through an experience that we all went through. And we were having this conversation, and she was like, I just want to reach out because I want to be in better relationship with them so that we can like have a shared understanding, and so that they can know that I didn't want to cause them any harm through all of this. And my thought was like, I'm going to, as an act of service to this person who needs this story to be able to understand what their healing is going to look like, I will accept the story that they're telling about me, because it will make it easier for them to process through this thing, right? And I think to a certain extent, like that's also how I approach some of this, like this breakup
That's
stuff
powerful.
is that like, it's not that I'm like trying to sever contact with this person or like, you know, because so many of us think about like the idea of like me not contacting this person or me agreeing to not be in community or relationship with this person is like withholding something, is like taking something, as being mean in some way. But the way that I think about it sometimes, not every time, but in some of these things, these situations, is like, it's actually me being kind to this person by not trying to change their narrative of what happened to them in this relationship, right? And to allow them to discover their own truth about it on their own, in community with their people, in their own therapy, right? And that my desire to have them know my thing or see it from my perspective is not as important in the situation as them figuring out what they want to take away from this or what they want to understand about it themselves. And so like that has helped me pivot to the idea that like this isn't about me trying to not like heal with this person, but it's more so about recognizing the idea that like our healing might have to diverge, and that me doing my own thing and respecting their perspective on me, the things that happened, is actually me trying to be helpful to them, me trying to be of service to them. So that might be a way to think about this. Again, like there's so many different ways to look at
Powerful,
this. Right?
Sam.
And
I feel like we could just use that clip and replace all 300 episodes of our show.
I don't think that's right. And there's a way to go too far with that thinking as well, right?
Yeah, like
where actually reaching out might be the best thing to do, where being in community or like healing with someone is actually super helpful, right? Like this is such a good example of the ways in which like we all have these different perspectives and ways of being that can be helpful for us in sometimes and like really not helpful for us in other times. And part of it is about being open to the idea that there's multiple ways of doing and being. And everyone on the private Facebook group is now like, oh my God, they're not giving advice again. But I think that for me in the situation, I wouldn't reach out to this person just because I wouldn't want to interfere with their own understanding of this relationship, and that my needs to like rectify the story or like come up with a different ending are not as important, at least in this moment, to them figuring out what their healing is. And like you said, they haven't reached out. Right.
So it's not clear that they're looking for that. I think you said that so fucking well, because there's a sliding scale. There's of trying to determine what is the most helpful thing right now to all parties. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes it feels really good to be like, listen, I'm a changed person. I've been to therapy. I will never treat somebody like that. Is that helpful to you? Yes. Is it helpful to them? We don't know. Probably not.
Right.
I love the examples you gave about how there are ways in which it's probably more healing for that person to have their own narrative and understanding of your behavior. Yeah, I think that was so beautifully put, because it leaves spaces for communication sometimes, and it leaves a lot of room for the fact that we all heal on our own. We're all the main character in all of our own stories. And so he's the main character in his healing, right?
That's right.
You're the antagonist, he's the protagonist, and you're the protagonist in your story. And that's okay. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Yep. So 2 votes for no / maybe not now, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Anyway, we love you. We obviously can't give you more direct direction than that, but that'll hopefully give you something to chew on. And most importantly, we're really, really proud of you and sorry that your heart has been through it this year.
Absolutely. This is hard work, and we see how hard you're working at it. So yeah, we love you.
We love you so much. We hope this helps.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. If you want more content from us, or if you would like your episodes without ads, you can support us on Patreon. If you support us on Patreon for as little as $5 a month, you'll get an additional bonus weekly episode, as well as access to our episodes without ads. That's patreon.com/justbreakuppod.
You can slide into our DMs, send us your favorite relationship meme, but most importantly, you can submit your questions about all matters of the heart at justbreakuppod.com, which is also where you can find our merchandise.
Please remember to like, follow, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating and review. This literally keeps our mics on and helps us reach more brokenhearted souls who need 2 random strangers giving them relationship advice.
Just Break Up is a production of Duvid Media, original music, recording, editing, producing, all magical things by our good friend Spencer Worth Davis. Make sure to check out his podcast, and remember, it's possible that you're the bad guy in somebody's story. And that's uncomfortable. It's sad. It's not fun to feel. Sometimes we get the opportunity to change that perspective, but sometimes our energy is better spent just leaning into that discomfort, stepping away, washing our hands of that, and knowing we can't control everyone's perspective of us. We can't always rectify the wrongs that we've done, but we can do better on our own for ourselves. And if all else fails,
just break up.